It's Rob Brown here with the Accounting Influencers Podcast Network. 5 shows going out every day of the week. We're doing a quick series to finish 2022 and go into 2023 with some very distinguished thought leaders in the accounting world to talk about what's happened and what is going to happen. I'm thrilled to have me today from Prime Global. It's Stephen Heathcote. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Rob. Good to see you again.
Steve, wonderful to have you with us. You've been a guest on the show before. For people that haven't come across you, just tell us a little bit about you and who you represent.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, and thank you for having me back. My name is Steve Heathcote. I'm Chief Executive of an association called Prime Global. We're around 300 firms worldwide in around 950 locations around the world, lots of different size, shapes, diversity. And our key goal really is to make sure our firms are ready for the future and ready for all the demands their clients are going to have of them.
I'm really looking forward to what you've got to say today, because you're in a unique space, Stephen, to speak about the whole of the profession. You're talking to managing partners and leaders in accounting firms every day, and so are your boards. So you've got a handle on what is happening. So let's kick off and ask you, how would you sum up 2022 for the accounting profession? Any surprises or key findings or outcomes for you?
I'd say it's been a very, very busy year, but also a very, very demanding year as well, as we've come from this transition away from the pandemic. And there's been huge demand for accounting services. And I think the value of those accounting services is stronger than ever before. And there has been some really interesting developments over the course of 2022 as well, which could shape the future of the profession quite dramatically, actually. So we look at what happened with EY and the announcement this year that they may split out their audit services from their advisory. That's the direction they're going down. Well, that's going to have a massive potential implication. If I think about my own career, I've been a professional accountant now for probably 30 years, actually. I'm getting a little bit old, but about around 30 years. But it's always been accounting firms are doing audit, tax, accountancy. Well, are we going to have specialized audit firms? And is that what expected in the market? So a massive development in terms of what could happen in the future. And then also, and I think this is hugely positive for the profession, we have the establishment of the International Sustainability Standards Board happened in 2022, and we have sustainability standards. So what a fantastic opportunity for the profession to step in and actually give assurance and prepare reports about the whole impact of businesses having on wider society. To me, that probably means I'm now more optimistic about the profession and what we can achieve than I ever have been in 30 years, because the potential is huge. But it does feel like we're at a crossroads, and we have to make some choices about, are we going to grab those opportunities, and are we ready to do so?
I'm certainly going to ask you later in this interview what's coming up in 2023 and where the opportunities are, and certainly environmental social governance is very much on the agenda for that one. So what kind of shape do you feel the profession is in as we emerge, not just from 2022, Steve, but from the pandemic generally? It seems like we're easing out of things now, and there's been something of a shake-up. Is it in good shape?
In many ways, it is in good shape. And I think it's in a much better shape than it was before the pandemic, because what the pandemic made us do is go through a lot of changes and lots of things you, Rob, has been banging the drum about for a long time. And I've been trying to encourage firms to do things with technology and to invest in their people more, develop the advisory skills which are needed for the future. They've had to take those steps just to be able to operate and serve those clients. So that's been extremely positive. And actually what I've seen with some of the partners I work with is because they lean back into their clients and they actually started to reach out to them and find out how they're doing through the pandemic, what are the big decisions they have to make, how can they help them survive, how can they help them take new opportunities. It's almost like a spark went back into their eyes, because they reminded them why they're doing this in the first place. And that's been fantastic. So in that sense, I think we are in a better shape than we were. But where I do have a real concern is huge demand, huge need for accountants, more than ever before, but people are not coming to the profession. So if you actually look at the shape of the profession and are the next generation coming through, I talk to my own 2 children, they're not interested in accountancy. They look at the tech companies, they look at these roles which seem really exciting to them, they look at the corporate sector, they look at the Googles. They think about accountants as, well, that's a lot of hard work and it's probably a little bit boring. So we've got a huge amount of work to do to reposition and revitalize the profession so it does become attractive. We all know it's a great profession to be in. It's served us so well, but we're not selling it well.
Sure. my mother, who is of an age, and so am I, passed on a box to me just recently with all of my old school reports from when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and coming up through school. And I'm going to have a good look through them at Christmas. I did okay at school. I wasn't one of the most academic, but I was fairly bright enough to get by. So I guess if you were giving accountants a school report, a percentage or an A, B, or C, or a mark out of 10, how would you rank them in terms of how they've performed over the last year or two, Steve?
Oh, thanks, Rob. And I know you were a teacher yourself, so you've seen a lot of these reports, I'm sure.
I've written many as a
career.
former high school math teacher, for sure.
Absolutely. So I would say for effort, it's A, because in terms of the commitment people have put into their clients, busy seasons that never end, the care about their quality, care about what they're doing, care about the clients in front of them, you can't fault the profession. But in terms of your question about performance and delivery, I'd have to say a C plus, but we're moving in the right direction. And the reason I'd say a C plus is we're still not there in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If I look at the board table in Prime Global, it's still absolutely male dominated. That's the same across most accounting firms. There are some positive signs. There are things, and I know you've been, Rob, for your podcast, trying to encourage and inspire more female leaders to come forward. And I'm sure that's helped to make an impact, but we're a long way off at the moment. Embracing technology, we still fear change. There's huge opportunity, as I mentioned before, around environmental, social, and governance opportunities. The profession are worried about that. The firms kind of step back and wait, and they're not sure they're confident they can do the work. And absolutely, we have to make this shift more to an advisory mindset. But accountants still struggle with that. They tend to do the work in front of them. They can be a little bit blinkered, and they have to start talking to their clients and understanding their business. We've progressed, and that C plus, I think, can move to a B and hopefully to an A. We're not there yet.
Yeah. Good, but could do better, as we would say as a teacher.
And the world needs us to do better.
Sure. What have you seen from the ecosystem of software and fintech and vendors surrounding the accountants, Stephen? Have you got any thoughts about them? Because there's a lot going on there too.
Yeah, the vendors, I've really noticed in the firms now, and this again was kind of speeded up during the pandemic, actually, there's a real realization that their whole service to their client is actually dependent on those vendors and services. So it's absolutely critical to their business, all parts of their business, be it onboarding clients, their billing, their payroll, their actual service delivery, be it accounting or tax. They're all dependent on cloud-based vendors and products. So there's been a real realization across the accounting firms. Well, if they're determining our price, they're determining the service level, they're determining our client's experience, we better select the right vendors, and we better get vendors who can support and help us and listen to our clients. So that kind of combination and partnership between accounting firms and those vendors, I think, is now stronger than ever before. And where there's also now much more realization is, how do you join all that up? And you hear firms all the time talking about their technology stacks or their app stacks. And it is all about that integration around the client, but they can only do that in partnership with vendors.
Got it. A quick comment on the associations, networks, alliances space, Steve. This is a world that you move in, obviously, at the highest levels. You talk to your peers, your fellow CEOs. We know there's consolidation, a lot of movement in the accounting world. We know it's the same in the fintech software space. What's happening in your world? How would you sum up 2022?
There is definitely that wave of consolidations, and that's fueled by a number of things. There's the private equity funding going into the profession. There's the fact that firms do have to make this investment into the future, and therefore, if they combine, that can help. There's a huge shortage of people and staff. So again, there's a feeling that if they combine, maybe they can create more teams. And so we are seeing that those combinations take place, and we're seeing a real drive for that across the profession. But at the same time, I think there's still firms very much standing by themselves, but the important thing is they need to have clarity of direction, and they need to be thinking about succession and bringing on the next level of professionals, and the whole sustainability of the firm, the whole strategy of the firm. So it's not inevitable, but there is definitely a move towards that consolidation and merger in the profession at the moment.
And it's not a time for firms to be isolated and alone, given the global world we're in.
No, partnership is more important than ever before, and it goes back to servicing their complete client needs. So firms more and more specialize in different areas or focus on particular types of client, but then they need to service them more widely. And the best way of servicing someone is through a trusted network or association where you can pass on those needs and bring in someone to help. And actually, one of the best things an accounting firm can do is be by their client's side and help them navigate the world. And that doesn't mean they have to provide the solutions. Like you say, doing it through partnership is in itself adding massive value to the client.
Yeah. So to sum up the last 2 or 3 years for us, we have the pandemic, obviously, which was unprecedented. But what lessons do you feel we've learned about what succeeded and what has failed in recent times?
To me, in terms of what has failed, if I look at my own career, and I'll just give you an example of this, it's the failure is often when we assume one size fits all, and we take that approach and we say this is what an accounting firm looks like, this is what the staff should do, and this is the path they should follow in their career, and that has failed, that model. So when I started, I am a professional accountant myself, and I remember one of my first days when I came in with my fellow trainees, and we were actually asked to stand against a wall, and one of the partners asked us to pull up our trousers or pants for our US listeners and have a look at our socks. So they went down the line and they looked at my socks, and I'm embarrassed to say, Rob, at the time I had white socks on.
Wow.
And they said white socks are not appropriate in the workplace. And a few people had coloured socks, and we were asked to go home. And we had to go home and change our socks and come back into work. Now, that was the kind of model of an accounting firm that an accountant would look the same, they'd follow the same career path, and they would do the same type of work to move on in their career. Now, if I compare that to today and a successful example, I was talking to a professional at one of our firms very recently who had actually left the circus to become a professional accountant. So they were a performer in Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
And they were thinking about their career, and they thought, okay, this is great. I love performing, but I can't do this all my life, so maybe I should be doing something else. And what an accounting firm had done, it said, we love the fact you're a performer. We love the fact you're working in Cirque du Soleil. Come into our firm, and what we'll do, we'll give you time off during, they've got time off now during the panto season, so they're able to go off and do those performances. We're going to match you to our entertainment clients, and we're going to really put you out there to kind of really understand them and talk to them. And that's a fantastic example, I think, because that's what is working. It's where the accounting firm is trying to understand their clients. They're recognizing their clients are diverse and they have different backgrounds and needs. And they're actually recognizing their team are diverse, and they're making it a strength. And that person was absolutely delighted to be a professional accountant, absolutely delighted. Thought this was the best career move they'd ever had. They hadn't sacrificed who they are in terms of their art and their performance, but it had become a strength for them within this accounting firm.
Wow. Certainly great lessons there about what succeeds in embracing all kinds of talent to grow your firm.
Absolutely. And a totally different outlook.
Well, let's look at 2023. It's difficult to make predictions for sure, but what do you feel will be some of the challenges that individual accountants and firms will have to overcome in the coming year?
The biggest challenge, and you'll hear this all the time, and anyone I talk to, any of the firm, they'll say people. That from the firm's perspective, that's the biggest issue. And that's people across a whole range of fronts. Is keeping their own people, making sure they're looked after, because it is a stressful environment. There's a lot of work to be done. It's having enough people to do the work that's coming in. So that's a challenge. And then it's also the right skills and capabilities. So that more of that advisory and value added mindset, which is very difficult to develop. So that's the number one challenge affecting the firms. But then that leads to other types of challenge as well, because firms are looking hard now at their client base. They're having to make really difficult choices about actually which clients do we want, and do we start to say no to some clients and we focus on the ones which are going to be more aligned to where we want to go as a firm in the future. But that's tough. It's a really tough thing to do. So looking into 2023, there's going to be more of those tough decisions. And what I say to the firms is they really need to become almost like a speedboat. They have to have a speedboat mentality, not a big container ship approach. So a container ship obviously takes a long time to change direction. We're in an environment where The client needs are going to change very quickly. It's a difficult economic environment. There's going to be different opportunities come in, and they have to be able to flip and change and look at new services very, very quickly. And that means having very nimble decision making. And many accounting firms are not structured for that. They're still partnerships. They're taking a long time making decisions. They'll get together to make decision about where the Christmas party will be. They don't need to be involved in any of those types of things. So again, it's a challenge to be more of a modern organization that is able to flip and turn very, very quickly to meet client needs.
Yeah, that all makes sense. What about opportunities, Steve? What do you feel are the biggest for accountants coming up?
There are some great opportunities, I think. And there's a great quote, you probably heard it. I'm sure, Rob, you've heard this before, because you're great at bringing different quotes in for to capture exactly the situation. But there's a quote from Senna, the famous Brazilian race car driver, where he says, when the sun is shining, you can't overtake 15 cars. It's impossible. But when it's raining, you can absolutely take over 15 cars. And that, I think, is a perfect message, because it is a difficult environment. Many accounting firms are out there thinking, how can we survive? How can we get the people to even do the jobs on our books? What a massive opportunity to actually make a big step forward. And those step forwards could be in a whole range of areas. There's going to be more M&A activity they can help with. There's probably new businesses, innovation, entrepreneurs, making those tough choices about what the clients to service in the future. There's new opportunities around environmental and social governance, which a firm could be embracing and starting to look at those areas, embracing using technology in a more efficient and effective way, using offshoring and being more imaginative about their staff base. So those steps now, if they do those things now, they can really pull ahead in the market when the other firms are just worrying about the day-to-day.
Yeah, I'd love that. So if we look at what separates the good accounting firms from the great ones, agility is definitely up there, so they can capitalize on a lot of these opportunities you're talking about. Where do you feel the margins, the gaps will be between the good and the great?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because to me, when you meet a great firm, you know it straight away. And this is where there's a difference, because you get that buzz. It's kind of a vibe around a firm, and it's everything about their brand, how people talk about them. There's a lot of clarity about what they stand for. The big thing, I think, which you can always tell a great firm, is when there's absolute pride that comes through when you talk to someone. And that's not about size. There's some firms in Prime Global, when I speak to them, and I speak to anyone in that firm, they're so proud about the brand because they understand what impact the firm's making. They understand what they're doing for their clients. There's one firm I'm just thinking of at the moment. It's very focused on helping entrepreneurs. And when you listen to them, you get a buzz, you get a lift. It's kind of like this energy that's coming out of the firm. And that's because they pay attention to culture and they live their values. It's not just putting the values up on a website. It's actually every single person in that firm understands them, and they know that their performance and how they're assessed is based on living the values and being true to where the firm's going. They invest in their technology. It's not just an afterthought. It's doing the minimum. They invest in their training for their people, and they're always talking to their clients, and they've got that feedback loop. The particular firm I'm thinking about, it's not a big firm, but everyone in that firm knows part of their job is to listen, and anything they listen and hear, they feed back to everyone else. So all the time, their brand's evolving, their marketing's evolving, their product offering is evolving, their partnerships are evolving, all based on a very clear vision of who they are and where they're going. And that to me is a big, that's a great firm. You get good firms doing good things. A great firm is the one who's create that vibe and that buzz around them.
Well, let's go to the other end of the scale. If there's great, then there's good, then there's below average or underperforming firms. And there are many reasons for that. What do you think might happen to those perhaps complacent accounting firms that can't adapt or won't change?
That's a great question. And the easy thing to say there, I guess, would be they won't survive, right? And some won't survive. But actually, I think there's a worse scenario that they do survive, because I think what will happen is there's so much demand for accounting services, and many of the firms are making these tough calls about there's certain clients they don't want, difficult clients that don't add much value, clients which make their staff's life miserable. They're dropping them. They don't need them. There's other services out there. There's more high value advisory services coming through, other people they can work with, which will help the firm get to where they need to be. So there's lots of people out there who probably need accountants. Where they're going to go? Probably to those firms which aren't doing any of the change. You haven't got much choice apart from accepting them. Now, what those firms are going to be very unhappy places. And they're going to be places where they're constantly losing staff. The people who do stay have kind of probably staying because they haven't got much alternative. They're not going to be very motivated. Their margins are going to be eroded because of the fact that they're not efficient. They're not doing the things they need to do to be efficient. They're probably losing work to others, any good work to others. So I think that's it's probably more miserable than surviving in a way. And no one will want to buy the firms because they won't really have much value related to them.
Yeah. Lots of impact there for firms that don't digitize, don't make it differentiated enough to attract good people. But in a way, you're right. Firms are like cockroaches. It's hard to kill them and move them away because people always need accountants. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. In terms of the people that serve the accounting profession, we could say the vendors there and the software. We could say people like you and Prime Global and the associations, networks, alliances, maybe even the professional institutes and the governing bodies, all of those people trying to help the accountants be better. What do you feel is coming up for them in the next year? There's
huge opportunities actually to help and again partner with firms to help them achieve what their clients are going to need in the future. So depending on the jurisdictions, there's things like making tax digital in the UK, which is a huge opportunity for many vendors. All the firms I talk to, they're all out there assessing the different tax packages out there in the market at the moment. So even if the vendor doesn't know, they're being assessed at this point, and so that's important for them to jump in and take those opportunities. SEC in the US, there's new requirements around, again, ESG, scope-free reporting, which is all about the company's impact on their wider value chain. All of that's coming through, so there's opportunities for vendors in that space. People development, so actually attracting people and bringing them into the workplace, that's really important. So there's huge opportunities there for groups like Prime Global, for the accountancy bodies, and actually new technology and innovation as well. There's a group we're working with called LumiQ, and LumiQ are really interesting. They have a technology platform, and it's all built on podcasts. And Rob, you've been innovative in podcasts for many years, so they've got this whole podcast offering around different themes which professional accountants are needing their development. And once you listen to the podcast, you do a small test, and it's recognized for continuing education. The next generation love it. It's bite-sized. You can do it anywhere. You can do it when you're out walking the dog. You can do it on the plane. It's fantastic. So for vendors who have, and maybe Rob, you should be taking all your podcasts and putting them onto an app that people could use, because I think it'd be very well received. But for vendors who can support in people development, there's a huge market there, because that's needed for the future. And I think the other one is practice management as well, because it goes back to the speedboat mentality. How can you make quick decisions unless you have a dashboard of knowing exactly where your profitability is? More and more firms are dependent on new business, because the annuity type work is actually dropping off, like audit, for example. So you might be doing well, but you have to be generating a pipeline of new business coming through. So you need a dash. You need to be able to run your firm like a business, and that takes good information. It takes understanding margins, understanding pipelines. So anything that a vendor can offer around overall firm management is also going to be very well received.
Yeah.
And I'd go back to that emerging area of ESG. It's not well served enough yet by different vendors, and it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge in the next 18 months as it gets pushed through supply chains. Great opportunity for people to step in and help both firms and their clients.
It'll be a fascinating year. Stephen Heathcote of Prime Global, thank you so much for your time and your insights today. That's been excellent.